After all this time, I guess you're starting to wonder who it is behind the scenes. Well, now that you're here, I guess I have no choice. It's nice to meet you. My name is Octoreges, Dragon of the Eight Kings. A certain younger brother of mine wanted me to make a video about backgrounds, so that's what we're going to be talking about today. I just finished drawing this background that's behind me, and now I'm going to walk you through how I made it. So, you're in for a real adventure. Get excited. Let's talk about perspective. So the first thing that I want to show you guys is how I've got my perspective set up, and kind of give you a quick look at how you can use this in a setup. So on my screen right here, you can see I have my perspective grid set up. I call this grid perspective, but really all it is, if I turn the grids off real quick here, it's just the regular horizon line linear perspective that you're probably used to. The only thing that I've done is that instead of just putting, let me grab a point here. Instead of just pointing a point on my line like this and drawing out two lines, however many lines you want, like 4 or something like that. Instead of doing that, what I've done is that each of these grids are my vanishing points. So I decided to use 3-point perspective because I wanted to try doing that. Most of the time I work in 1 or 2 point, and a lot of the time I don't even use the grid. Since this is going to be a little bit more detailed of a background and it's for a tutorial, I thought I'd try out using grid perspective for real. Now, I'm probably going to just be using mainly 2-point perspective because I'm going to be drawing a cityscape. That was the background that my little brother kind of requested that I do. And it also is the thing that's going to fit with my character, which you've already seen that at this point in the video, so you kind of know what it's going to end up looking like. And the reason I say that I'm probably mainly going to be working in 2-point perspective is because of this. So with this, and this is kind of why grid perspective is sort of cool, it gives you reference points beyond just having a couple of lines, right? So I can go here and I can draw up, and then I can go here and I can draw up, and it gives me a measurement. It's just like drawing on graph paper, if you've ever done that for math class in school. It's just like that. So I can kind of set up a building, or I could set up 2 streetways here. Ignore my bad drawing with mouse and keyboard, but that's kind of the idea, right? So you could have 2 different roads coming from it. You could also use 2-point perspective to set up a room, because you can use these again as reference lines. So I could set up a wall with a doorway going out here, and then my wall could connect back this way, and maybe I could have a picture hanging on it, something like that, right? Now 3-point, I'm still not entirely sure that I understand how to use it. It's one of the reasons that I wanted to try it out for this video. Probably what I'll use 3-point for, and I may not even need the grid for this, is just this will probably be where your eye is drawn in the background, is to this vanishing point. And so that's probably what my 3rd point of perspective is going to represent. But the main thing is the other 2 for drawing out the cityscape back to our horizon line. So anyway, I'm going to jump into putting this together into a sketch, and then we will come back and I will kind of talk through how it worked. We're also going to talk about foreground, midground, and background. But yeah, we'll handle that once I get back with the sketch. Roll music. So the first thing I want to kind of show you is just how I have my stuff separated here again. So when I was doing my line art, and you don't have to do it this way, but this is just so I can show you guys. But when I was doing my line art, I separated it into the foreground, which are these pieces here that are blinking on and off. And then I have my midground. And then I have, technically this is also midground, like these. So these two are the midground, but this was the outlines for the apartment. It was easier to do that on a separate layer. And then we have my background, which is my cityscape out the window here. Using grid perspective really worked well, mapping all of this out, and it let me get a more detailed background because I wasn't having to sit here and think about, at least not as hard. I wasn't having to sit here and think about where all these buildings were in relation to each other. So I used Google Earth and found a city reference. Part of Octoreges' story is that he is from Australia. So I used Sydney, which is there right next to Canberra, which is Australia's capital. Another thing that I tried to do, and I don't know if I pulled it off exactly correctly, but you might be able to tell that some of the outlines for the buildings that I've done here are more bold than the ones that are farther away to kind of help define that space. And that's all you're really doing with this midground and background and foreground. So foreground talks about the stuff that's closest to me, right? And then we have the midground, which is everything else in the apartment, including the apartment itself, right? That's everything else that's here falls into the midground because it's a little bit farther away from me. These lights up here could technically be part of the foreground. Like there's some areas where things kind of overlap. And there are no hard and fast rules for like what should technically be considered foreground, midground, or background. Midground is just stuff that's a little bit farther away. Some of these closer buildings in what I've labeled as my background here for my cityscape could be considered midground too. Basically, it's just closer things are in your foreground, slightly farther away things are in your midground, and really far away things are in your background. And again, you don't have to separate those out into different layers. It's just the way that you can think about how you're separating things, even in what is closest to you in that. And you'll see more of that once we get into color perspective. And we're also going to talk about atmospheric perspective as well. Let's get back to the time lapse. So the first thing that I actually want to talk about isn't this piece, though. It's not the finished one. It is a picture that I sent to some of my friends in a group Discord that I'm in that just has the flat colors that I did on the piece. And you can see there is a big difference between this and this. And a lot of that difference is lighting and atmospheric perspective, which we will get to in a second. But we're going to talk about the flat colors for just a minute. So it's not a PSD. It is one solid image. And I'm just going to have to kind of walk you through this. Anyway, so what I wanted to talk about first was color perspective. So you can't really see it on this picture, but if we go back over here to my finished one, you can see that there's supposed to be like a sunset or sunrise going on right here, coming from this direction where the window is. And that is hitting all of the things in the apartment here. So everything is being hit by that light coming from the rising sun over here. And if you check it out here as well, I made the sky orange. And that was just to kind of signify that, like, that's the direction that my light is coming from. But you can also kind of tell that that's the direction that the light's coming from even before I did rendering. And the reason you can tell is because this color here on the back of this building is darker than the color that's right here, right? And this color is slightly darker than this color. But that's how you can tell that my light source was coming from this direction. Not so much in the apartment itself, but in the city, you can really tell. And that's what I'm talking about with color perspective. You can use lighter colors farther into your background, or in the foreground too, if you were doing it in reverse. But for example, like what I have here, you can use lighter colors in the background to make those things seem like they're farther away or they're being hit by a light source from somewhere. Naturally, in real life, and this is what we're going to talk about when we get into atmospheric. So let's go ahead and talk about that. So if I turn off my foreground and my midground and the apartment, so you can kind of see here what the background looks like just on its own. But do you notice that, okay, so like the building's back here, but back here where the train is and where this tower is, there is a blue tint, like a bluish hue to everything back there. If you look at my flat colors, that's not there, but it's not this like hue, right? It's not this light blue, almost faded kind of look. The reason that that's there is because that is atmospheric perspective. And it's actually built on how things look in real life, like a lot of things in art are. So if you go out and you have a view of like a city skyline, it may vary a little bit with cities, or if you have a view of like a mountain, and that mountain is really far away from where you are, but you can see the top of the mountain. A lot of the time, that mountain is going to appear to kind of fade a bit into the sky's color. But that's why it's called atmospheric perspective. And you're just, again, you're building on the illusion that certain objects are farther away than they actually are. Because this is a 2D image. So that image is actually flat. But you can see distance and perspective a little bit better in this because it's tinged blue that way. Because it has that atmospheric perspective to it. And that since that mirrors real life and the way things look that are far away in real life, it'll make it look more far away in your work as well. So that is atmospheric perspective and color perspective. Just a quick look at those. Anyway, I really hope that you guys enjoyed getting to take a look at backgrounds with me. I'm really happy with how this background has turned out, and I'm hoping to be able to use it soon. So just as a quick recap, grid perspective works really well, a little bit better than I kind of thought it was. It's really great for making detailed backgrounds and for helping to figure out how the objects in your backgrounds interact with each other. You have your midground, your foreground, and your background, which is just how you separate the objects that are closest to you from the ones that are further away to help build that illusion that things are farther away and that this is a 3D image. Same thing with color perspective. Things that are farther away tend to be lighter in color. Atmospheric perspective helps accentuate that, and so on and so forth. And that is more or less how to draw backgrounds, at least as far as it goes with perspective. I'm sure there's more things you could touch on, but that is going to be the end of this video. Let me know in the comments if you want to see more videos on how to draw backgrounds, maybe something on a slightly different topic than just perspective. Make sure to like and subscribe, otherwise I won't make any more videos. But until then, my name is Octoreges, and this is me. Over and out.